Hey guys, and welcome to Tnashi's Movie Corner, and it is time to finally get this done. Star Wars profiles. I'm starting with Asajj Ventress. Hopefully you guys have at least a general idea of this character, but we're going to look into her past and delve into some of the aspects that define her and why I like her so much as a character. So let's start off with a quote from her. I'm going to take part of this quote here from the book Dark Disciple, which I certainly recommend you get because it ties up her storyline from the Clone Wars. In fact, it was originally going to be like a three-parter for Clone Wars episodes, and of course the Clone Wars got canceled during the deal that Lucasfilm made with Disney. But all of the Clone Wars TV series is canon. So this book was an accumulation of these three episodes. And I definitely recommend checking it out. There will be spoilers for it. But here's part of it where it goes, the kind where we're slaves to our hatred, our rage, that's what the dark side made me. That's what it does. Nothing is ever enough. You get more and more, but you're never happy. It's a trap baited with all the things you want most in life, and it's not worth living. I already left that behind. So, right there, we get kind of her look at the dark side and what it can do to people, and I think it's very important because it kind of goes with Anakin. So it kind of represents Anakin and it represents her as well and everything that she's gone through. Now I'm going to start off reading this little bit here just to say that she is actually 5 feet 10 inches in height. And as you can tell from part of her picture, her pale skin actually bears ritual tattoos on it. Now I'm not certain yet what those are for, except in association with who she is, which is a Dathomirian from the homeworld Dathomir. So, looking at her character, she's gone through a lot. In some ways, it kind of mirrors Anakin, and you're definitely going to see why. But she was born into a clan of Force-sensitive Night Sister witches led by Mother Talzin on the planet Dathomir. Now, as far as the Night Sister witches are concerned, they are basically an alien race that is able to tap in to the dark side of the Force, but they're not Sith. They don't follow the teachings of the Sith. So they're just very Force sensitive and able to use that to the world. They actually have a ritual that they go through in order to become adults and their clan, where they have to fight this creature which is highly immersed with the dark side of the Force. So that's just to go ahead and tell you that just because you can use the Force doesn't mean that you're Jedi or Sith, and we saw some of that, of course, in episode 8 and other things along the way. But being said, early in her life, her coven was forced to surrender her to the criminal House Dead, who spirited her away from her sisters to the worn-torn world of Ratatat. And I apologize if I get any pronunciation wrong, but she was raised as a slave in his service. She was orphaned later on when her master was killed by Wike pirates, but she was actually later discovered when she tapped into this Force ability that she had. She tapped into the Force, used it to kind of defend herself, and she was discovered by Jedi Knight Kai Narek, who was stranded on this planet and who was waging a battle against the pirates himself. So basically seeing this potential within her, and we've seen this kind of power accumulate in other people as well at an early age. It's what leads the Jedi to initially take them. Now, she was a bit older at the time, but she was taken in by him, raised by him, and taught how to use the Force as an unofficial Padawan in the ways of the Jedi Order. And this was without the knowledge of the Jedi Order. But together they protected the people of Red Attack and fought against the attacks of the pirates and warlords. However, after a decade of helping the local population, unfortunately she was orphaned once more when Narek was killed by the pirates. He was actually shot in the back, I believe. And they were seeking to end the Jedi's crusade on their world. Enraged by the loss and with no guidance whatsoever, she tapped into the dark side of the Force. Now, we don't know for sure if she was already aware of this potential, but she tapped into it and ended up embracing it, using it to dispose of the local warlords and the pirates, and ended up ruling the planet instead. This, of course, led to her being eventually discovered by the Sith Lord Count Dooku, and she quickly fell under his guidance and tutelage as an apprentice and aspiring Dark Lord herself. Dark Acolyte, I believe, is the term. So the reason Dooku took interest was because of her already impressive display of power within the dark side that was, kind of wild, untamed, and he thought, as all Dark Lords of the Sith do, that if he could teach her in the ways and she could grow strong enough, they could overthrow Darth Sidious, which, of course, Palpatine at the time, who was in charge. So, and this kind of mirrors something as well that we saw in the Force Unleashed video game, where Vader tried kind of a similar feat, and you're going to see some of that pan out here the same way. So when the Clone Wars erupted between the Galactic Republic and Dooku's Confederacy of Independent Systems, Ventress became a commander in her master's separatist droid military and an assassin in the employ of the Sith. This would lead to her fighting several times against different Jedi, including Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, as well as a few other Jedi at the time that she's managed to go through that actually got expanded upon from what little we saw of them in the prequel trilogy, such as Luminara. So, and it was one of those things where she was actually looked like she was going to defeat Luminara until Ahsoka came up. And we see at the clip at the beginning just how much she can tap into the dark side, using her capabilities to force choke Anakin and Obi-Wan at the same time while lifting them in the air. So she certainly has a lot of power. That being said, as the war progressed, Darth Sidious became increasingly wary of her growing strength in the Force, and realizing that she might become a threat, ultimately ordered Dooku to eliminate his apprentice in a show of loyalty. Again, this goes kind of with the Force Unleashed, and what Sidious realizing that Vader's apprentice was too powerful as well, and ordering the same thing. So, doing that, Dooku complied, and during the Battle of Solace, he betrayed Ventress and ordered her own forces to execute her. And because of that, she managed to get away and go to her homeworld Dathomir to seek refuge and revenge. She was welcomed back by Mother Talzin and her coven, and she was actually enlightened in a way of what had happened to her, and up till this point. And of course, she decided that she was going to conspire with them to kill Dooku, which ultimately they, of course, fail at. But after their failure, they decided to do a new approach, and that was to go and select someone who would infiltrate Dooku's ranks, become his new apprentice, but actually work for Ventress. So, in doing so, Ventress ended up selecting the Zabrak Night Brother Savage Ventress, who, as we find out later, ends up being Darth Maul's brother. And Savage ends up going and becoming the new apprentice for Dooku. So, up to this point, I mean, we've had a lot of stuff going on already. The objective here was for Appress and for Ventress to team up to eliminate Dooku. However, things kind of went awry. Appress ran off, and having failed, Ventress returned to Dathomir to rejoin her clan. But Dooku was already, at this point, he was mad about everything that had gone down. So he sent a droid army with Grievous in charge to take out everyone on the planet of on Dathomir, all of the Night Sisters, which they did just that. They killed, pretty much massacred all the Dathomirian witches, except for Mother Talzin, who ended up retreating, and of course Ventress, who ended up fleeing from the planet. So because of all this loss and everything that had happened, she actually turns towards bounty hunting, and ends up actually going on a mission with Boba Fett. And this was after killing bounty hunter Aked. She takes his place on a mission led by Boba Fett to protect a chest on a train, which when opened revealed a young girl held captive inside. So she actually ends up double-crossing Boba Fett and freeing the girl. So right there we can see that she's showcasing moments that go out, even though she's been exposed a long time to this world of kind of the dark side of the Force and being a Sith. She is showing signs of compassion, which is unheard of, obviously, and that kind of for that kind of that kind of life choice that you have there. It was you're not supposed to do that. That's going towards the wrong side. That's showcasing doubt, and at this point she had kind of veered away from it anyway. She'd veered away from the teachings, but we really see a different aspect of her when she does that. And when she fought Obi-Wan, actually she managed to do a little flirtation. There was a little flirting between the two of them, so that in itself was a bit different from your usual Sith ways. However, one of the things as a bounty hunter she ends up doing is she ends up going after Savage Ventress, her former apprentice, trying to capture him in order to get the bounty on him. And in doing so, she ends up teaming up with Obi-Wan, and they end up fighting both Darth Maul and Ventress. So that in itself was quite an interesting episode. Well, actually, I think it was more than one, but that was quite an interesting little series because we get to see her again in a different light and a different thing, and she teams up with Obi-Wan. I think she even gets an offer from Obi-Wan to go and to kind of join him, and which she refuses. Now, this is where we're getting into Dark Disciple, because she ends up meeting someone named Quinlan Vos, who is a Jedi Master that we see in Episode 1, brief cameo, and we see in the Clone Wars. So if you're up to date on the Clone Wars, you should recognize him. He was in a few episodes, standout episodes. So, but she ends up encountering him, and the Jedi have come up with a plan to assassinate Count Dooku, and there's this whole big debate on what it does for the Jedi, how it affects the Jedi's philosophy, how it goes against their teachings and everything else, and whether the means justifies what they're doing, or the end. Sorry, whether the end justifies the means. So it's one of those things where Quinlan Vos, who is actually a little different in being a Jedi, he's a bit more like Qui-Gon in a way. So he has a different prospect on it, but they end up partnering together, and actually they end up falling in love, which was an interesting aspect for sure. Ventress trained Vos in Night Sister culture and dark side skills to prepare for Dooku, but in their attempt to kill him, they end up failing, and she was forced to flee while he was taken into Confederate custody. So, and again, this is very spoilerish, as you can tell. So I'll try not to dwell everything in it, because I suggest 100% you go check it out. But needless to say, there's a lot that happens in this book, both leading up to him being trained to take on Dooku, the first failed attempt against Dooku, and what accumulates after that failed attempt, including, again, Boba Fett coming into the picture, which I always think is interesting when he shows up again. But that being said, this entire book kind of wraps up her story arc, as well as gives us different perspectives on characters. Like Quinlan Vos gets more fleshed out. We have Dooku, who actually gets a little more fleshed out. Obi-Wan and his dealings, and on all the dealings with the Jedi, and how they've changed from the course of Episode 1 to now. How there's now doubt seeping in of what they're willing to do to end the war, and what length they're willing to go to. So it's definitely a book I recommend. But the thing about her, and like I said, it does mirror Anakin a little bit. She was in slavery as a child. She does get taken in by a Jedi against the Council's knowing, in this case, but that Jedi is killed. She does tap into the dark side. She does get taken under the wing of an older gentleman who's kind of like being there for her in a way that she's had no one really there for her for a while now, because every time someone steps in, they ultimately die. And of course, she gets betrayed by this person. So that's when everything differs, because you get this whole look into her culture and what happened to her up to this point. And just the entire arc of it was really well done. I think it was the Night Sister arc in the Clone Wars. There's more to it than that, but the entire thing of it was just it's really cool. So that's one of the reasons why I obviously recommend watching the Clone Wars if you can, because I think there's just a lot to showcase there with her. So I mean, she's just she's such an interesting character, and she's overcome such kind of hardships and everything. And I like her ability. I like her potential. I like her abilities. You know, she uses two lightsabers, but she doesn't really use the double blade. So it's a little different in that regard. And the interesting thing for me is she was actually concept art. Originally, she could have been in the place of Count Dooku. She was one of the concept art characters that was in the final process of being the apprentice to Darth Sidious for the main series. Ultimately, of course, she didn't get picked, and I think I read somewhere that had to do with Christopher Lee kind of doing an audition for the movie, and so they kind of fit Dooku around Christopher Lee. So that was one of those things where, again, because she wasn't used in there, they ended up using her later, and I think that's kind of cool when they're able to do that, and to again give so much to a character, which is a side character and isn't, definitely not one of the main villains. Now, it should be noted that, again, she's a dark acolyte, so she's not. She was never technically considered a true Sith, a Dark Lord. She did not get that title. In my mind, she was Sith because she's still an apprentice to that, but she never. It's like gaining the title of Master. She never gained the title of Master. So, and of course, the role of 2 for Sith, which has been standing since the time of Darth Bane. Even though before then you were allowed, there was as many Sith as you want, it's been kind of upheld, or more or less, since that point. So she was never deemed a true Sith in that regard. However, like I said, she's got a lot of interesting story arcs to her, a lot of interesting confrontations. I personally like her. I think she's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Star Wars character, because she's just fleshed out so much, and she's one of those things where she has so many different perspectives and so many different times. You would think with everything that happened to her, she would ultimately have been just completely consumed by the dark side and have no redemption to her story at all. But to see how it plays out, I thought it worked really well. So anyway, that's about all I can say on her. I'm not going to go into every battle and every encounter that she had in the Clone Wars. Again, I recommend you go check it out. I'm not going to give away everything from Dark Disciple. I gave away quite a bit as it was, just with that little bit I said, but I don't want to give everything away. I recommend you go check that out too. And let me know if you found this interesting, if you enjoyed this. Did you enjoy it? Hopefully you enjoyed it. And let me know what character. I'd be curious to know what character you want to know about next, or maybe another Star Wars topic you would like me to discuss, because I do enjoy, I don't know if you know this, I enjoy talking about Star Wars. What? Yes, I know, it's crazy. Oh my God. Who would have thought? But I do. I like talking about Star Wars. So hopefully you guys enjoy this vid. Click that like button, share, subscribe to my channel, and watch my other vids. I do appreciate it. And until next time, peace.